Hey everybody. We're working on moving, sort of refactoring the application to kind of separate concepts. But in the meantime, I did make this cool animation. It could be so much cooler, but I'm not like a artistically creative individual. I'm more of a like functionally creative individual. Some people have said that I'm like super creative in the fact that like someone can make like a drawing of a web page and then I can sort of emulate that drawing. So I can kind of take some sort of thing that's given to me and then sort of translate it into HTML and CSS and JavaScript and stuff like that. Um, but you know, and I love like AI art, like telling some AI to draw something for me. Um, and I've done set up kind of a website for my wife's business that's brought her in a good bit of money, um, either directly or indirectly, doing art. So like I'll go to AI and say, draw me a Pegasus in steampunk, blah blah blah, and then cut it up and push that out to a website, and then people look at it and go, oh, I want that on a Tumblr. But anyway, for years I sat next to this guy, or no, for like a year and a half, I sat next to this guy who was the vice president of TNT, and web, not TV, but web. And this guy and I sat next to each other for like at least 7 or 8 months, where we honestly, literally didn't say more than like 6 words to each other. And that whole time, beyond the hey, good morning, hey, have a great night, have a great night, bro. That's it. Like literally, always we would sit next to each other for hours and never say a word to each other. He was a cool dude though. He was a really neat guy, real brilliant. Um, but he had one after a little while, after about a year or maybe 8 or 9 months, we started kind of having a fairly good, having decent conversations. And one of the things he had mentioned to me was that like their art, they had lots of artists and stuff working for them, but they wanted to build like really cool buttons and stuff like that, and they just didn't have any really good tool that would let them do that. And the point is that like, see, this is a good example of like maybe something that they would think of, that they'd want to sort of cut into a like an MPEG, or make it into a GIF or whatever. Like they'd have some sort of recording thing and turn this into a little button that then they'd be like, it would catch people's eyes to click it or whatever. Click next or whatever. Um, but so and then the point of that would is that I am in a very I am a great, like, this is an incredible opportunity for me. I'm very privileged at this moment to get to refactor this in a way that I think it should be refactored, in order to be able to add other things in the future and grow this application the way I want to grow it. Because like if I worked in a corporation, we would be figuring out, okay, how do we add the ability to add rounded edges here, and we would be coming with all kinds of different sort of ideas on how to make this a better tool for whatever the organization was trying to do. Like in, if they were trying to create instructions or whatever they needed, t-shirts, oh, we need graphics for t-shirts. We'd be focused on that and not focus on like, okay, how do we get it to where we can add things that we want in the future? And so this would be a very unique thing. And there's a couple of approaches, like it would be hard to do this if I was in a professional organization, because one thing is we would have every single, let's say there was like 3 or 4 of us working on it, we would have every single primitive mesh buildable already. So then trying to refactor it would be difficult. And in addition, we'd have every kind of light, we'd have all these properties and all these things working, and so it would make it very difficult to now say, oh, okay, now I have this other concept that I'm trying to build out. That would be hard to do. Secondarily, like the other people need something to work on. So, we'd be coming up with like ideas and stuff of things to work on. But if I'm trying to refactor the whole underlying architecture of this thing, that really wouldn't be doable. So something that sometimes, if you have a lot of juice, you might get them to let you work on, okay, now that was cool, and now the team is working on this set of features, and now we're going to rebuild the new one and from scratch that's going to be the 2.0. But they're adding features to this as fast as they can. It's going to take a while for 2.0 to ever catch up, and the 1.0 team is going to be like doing everything they can to get ahead of you so that you can never replace them, because they'll fall in love with the 1.0 or the proof of concept or whatever. And that's difficult too. And, and then there's a lot of backroom politics and stuff that happen. So, this, where I own this, I'm the only one working on this. If somebody else has decided to branch off of this and make their own version, hey, more power to you. But, I'm not, I'm going my own, I'm doing my own thing, and I'm not worried about like somebody else's work and messing up their work. And I'm not worried about what direction they decide to go in and do things. But anyways, I think one thing that might make this look a little cooler would be to maybe add the wall mesh, right? Right now there's like a wall mesh and a text mesh, and the wall mesh is right behind there. But what if we made the wall mesh a little farther back? So, and then, like, so the shadowing works a little better because of that, but it's too small. So now we can make the wall mesh bigger, right? We can say, okay, its width is 4.5. And now that width is a little better and the shadows work a little better. But what if we were to make it like the wall like 9.5 width and the height like 4, double the height and the width. And so now what do we have? I think that's pretty cool. Let's try like, so to me it seems like what we really need is just more height and width as opposed to it being farther back. So that's pretty cool, and I think we do need it to be farther back now. 6. So you can't really see it, and I guess because the light isn't bright enough, so like the light needs probably to be a little closer to us. So let's say if I make it 1, so it's closer to the camera, but its intensity needs to also go up. So 1. And I think you get the point, is that there's just a lot of stuff we can do with this, that would be very unique. I mean, is like if someone was like very artistically inclined, they could probably come up with some really neat ideas, on how to build something that's really cool, and set up a set of colors and all that really works, and something that's going to catch the eye. And, like you can catch this video around here and then shrink it, so that it's the size of a button, and then make it like something that that's pretty cool, like let's see, what if I say click me, and then move it to the left a little bit more so it's kind of centered up, and that's cool. I mean, I think that's really cool. 0.8. Maybe it's all caps, maybe make it bold. I don't know what, oh, I just made it Helvetica, which I don't like as much as Gentilis, I think it kind of makes me a little woozy to look at it. But yeah, so anyways, that is that. So now, where are we? We are in a point where we have created some new services, a Showtime service folder and a 3 service folder. And the idea is to take the Showtime, we're trying to move the scene service stuff out of there. And so what we did was we took everything that was 3 specific and we moved it in, and then we took everything that is Showtime specific and we moved it over here. And what the kind of the ideas that started to kind of come into my head was just like, oh man, like when I do this return, I actually give it's a I give a reference to this actual object, and then down here I actually destroy that reference and I create a new one, which could cause some weirdness when other things are um, when other things are this thing's sliding over bugs me. See how it's just slowly sliding over, and that's because in the animation, um, the X position should now be 2.8. So that it doesn't move. Um, but they and see, those are the sort of like things that we would probably be coding around if we were trying to build this now as a tool for our organization to use, or if we were like a product that we wanted people to use. It's like, oh, when you create the X, when you change the X position of the mesh and they were currently matching, then should we update the match? And we'd start adding all kinds of crazy logic to just to make it more user friendly. Um, and we're probably, and so then that sort of functionality would get lost if we were building like okay, now we're going to build a 2.0 version of this thing. Um, well, we lose, how would we remember to move, to also do that new functionality? Questions like that, so, um, and then like people don't fall in love with those little pieces of functionality. So then when you start, oh, okay, we're going to roll out 2.0 and it's missing all of that new functionality that sort of organically got put into this application, then that's when all the political battles start to thing. Did we waste all our time and money on this new 2.0 and it's not even as good as the 1.0? But anyways, so like things about state and stuff, ideas about state started to come in, and then sort of I've done a lot of study about like things like NGRX and all that, and then sort of kind of the decisions they made start to make a little more sense. Um, and that's how you become better at software development. But anyways, so now comes the hard part, right? Because we have our ThreeJS scene. Okay, so uh, and we're going to have to go into the ThreeJS service, and instead of using our one scene service, we need to figure out, okay, what do we do um, when everything that uses the scene service, now that needs to be recoded to use the two services, and how do we do that? And that is actually a walk in the park, simple compared to when we start doing some of the other more complex services, like the light and mesh service specifically, but even the camera service, like how do we, how do we tease those pieces out so that we have our 3JS, our 3JS logic and functionality separated from our Showtime logic and functionality. And the biggest reason we need to do that is because right now we only have one way that this stuff gets created, and that is from this form, these forms. But in the future, we're going to have importers, and I would like to have something that imports from like our own custom JSON, but I also want something that imports from CSV, so that we can use Excel to create thousands of items that we might want to create. And then also I would like to import from STL, from 3D printing language, and maybe other kinds of languages as well, and or other kinds of formats as well. And once we start having a bunch of different ways that go into our scene, our scenes, and into our Showtime format, and then that goes from that Showtime format out to other formats, and might be going out to other things like physics engines, like what, like do I want to set up some sort of gravity on this so that the click me falls at a certain rate and has a certain weight and has all those things too. Like we might be going out to other kinds of engines. So, it all gets very, very, it's, if we want to take this to another level where we have really cool things with gravity and sound and stuff like that, we're going to have to make this a lot more flexible than it is right now. And teasing those pieces apart is going to be challenging. So now, obviously, the first step is very easy, and that's let's bring these two services in. So basically, the idea is we want to bring two services and replace this scene service with those two services. Um, so, um, and then the names of those services will be a little bit easier. So, I mean, a little like more informative. So we have our three scene service. So it's very clear that the only thing that should ever come into this three that would ever be in that is stuff that does three. And I guess I should ThreeJS scene service. Um, and then let's go ahead and find out what the name of that service is. And I definitely would not, like, if you're just trying to make a name for yourself in a new job, in a new career, you're very young, I would not suggest doing this. It it would be very at work because it would be very, very, like they really do sort of um, like they stroke your ego so you think you're super important, but that importance evaporates very quickly. And this trying to do like a big expansion for a second version and all that is it's very, very difficult to make a career to win those political battles. And it's there's just a lot of issues. So like, I mean, you could try it. You could try it, but I don't know. And then this is our showtime, and this is sort of a very important moment in this application because this is the moment where this is truly the birth of the showtime concept. So before we had a concept that we take stuff from a form and we have objects that we use, and then we use those objects to make ThreeJS, and that was a very simple concept. Now we have a much more complex concept. We have two moving parts instead of one moving part, which makes things really more like four times more complex. Um, it's more like two times two, not one times two. We have the concept of we have our showtime objects that get updated, and then we have a library, a service that takes those showtimes objects and turns them into ThreeJS objects and feeds that to the ThreeJS engine, right? That's where we are now. We have the two things, not the one thing. And the only reason we need that is because this showtime object is going to eventually get fed other things other than ThreeJS things, and it's going to get fed them from other things than just the form. So it would become almost impossible. It would become complete spaghetti code if we try to maintain that as one thing, one kind of object that can be the one kind of scene object. All of that's all jammed together, and it can do ThreeJS, and it can do music, and it can do all of those things. Yeah, it would be very, very difficult to do that. Um, and the reason I'm talking so much is because I've literally never done anything like this before. And I've always imagined things like this. And now I'm getting to try something like this, which, was not something that, was not something that, was just in my mind is like, was not something that I would ever have been able to do if it wasn't my own project. And I'm like just don't know. I don't know how this is all going to work out, and I'm hoping it works out really well. I'm hoping that I don't have to get to the end of this, you know, in a couple weeks and say, okay, never mind, I'm bailing out of this whole branch because that is just too much to do. All right, so now we have our scene service, and the idea is that our scene service, everything in our scene service will get handled by these two. I don't know why we have a breakage right now. This should have been easy. I think we may have an extra semicolon. I mean, an extra closing bracket. All right, so basically tomorrow what'll happen is we'll make our first, and so I'm actually moving everything lock, stock, and barrel, the whole darn thing over. I don't think I'll be able to do that with like the light service. I think with the light service, I'm going to have to come up with some scheme to move pieces of it out and slowly take away responsibilities from the light service and give them to the two new services until the light service is completely gutted and there's nothing in there. And then being able to delete it, kind of like the way I've done with the interfaces. Um, I do not know exactly how that's going to work, but basically I think the idea now is it's simple enough that I could go like this, private scene service, and then find everywhere that it's broken, and then say, okay, so this is a ThreeJS setup scene. So I need to get the scene item from Showtime, the Showtime scene item, and then I need to feed that to the ThreeJS scene service, setup scene service, and and then update. Very similar. Like, okay, I need to get the update, or I need to update the Showtime service, and then get it, and then I need to publish it by getting the new one and publishing that, and I need to do the animation stuff, and I need to update the ThreeJS with the new stuff, So, and there's a ton of things, right? There's this one too, where okay, I'd add a new light to the scene. So right now, I don't have like a way to add a light to a scene in the three service, right? Yeah, we don't have. So probably need to just create like a generic add item to scene, and then over here add this 3 light to the scene, and then or maybe I just get the scene. Yeah, I'll probably have a function and then pass it this 3 light, and then that function is going to have the proper like the ability to accept an argument that isn't just an any, right? So then that's going to be a problem there, and that's going to be easy. That's going to be fun. And then attaching the project target is adding a new item to the scene. So that generic item before is probably going to be fine. And then removing a light from the scene. So we probably just the generic remove object, because it looks like the scene can just remove things. It doesn't, you just give it the object and it knows how to remove it. And then this actually automatically brings up, like, when you remove a spotlight, we probably want to make sure to remove its target too if one exists. And I don't have any of that functionality. So that was a miss in this code that just quickly reveals itself as a problem. And then adding meshes to a scene. And so this is a generic thing. And then same thing, removing object. And fortunately we don't have any, I don't think we have any targets or anything like that. And then this, I guess, is our animation callback, which basically this loops through all the scenes. So it needs to get a list of scenes and handle that. And then get scene ID, get scene item for ID. Um, so this is interesting. I don't even know what this does. Okay, this scene items. Okay, so this is a ThreeJS. I mean, this is a Showtime thing, and it goes and it finds the scene item for a given ID. I don't. It'll be. I'm very curious what that does. Why that exists. It'll be very interesting to learn that. And then what does this do? This is part of resetting the clock. Basically, yeah. Apparently, this is just for a reset. So that I think that's what that get item for scene is for. Um, so yeah, it's not going to be simple, and it does make us think through certain things, and it's already exposed sort of the bug of, hey, when we delete a light, we're not deleting, if it's a spotlight, we aren't deleting the attached light. Um, so that's a thing too that I'm going to have to dig into, um, and that is a classic memory leak. Um, is it a memory leak that the way this application works that would ever cause us a problem? No, because I mean, like, even if we added a million targets, it's not going to slow things down. But if one day we're like, oh, I want to emulate the entire universe or the entire galaxy, and I want to be able to see the Big Dipper and what it's going to look like and stuff like that, which would be quite ambitious. But if we were to ever do that, then that could be a serious memory leak that could cause millions and millions and millions of attached objects to not get deleted. Um, and I think that the reason that that mistake happened was just because when you're trying to delete things from scenes, it we have all these things, all these these Showtime concepts and these ThreeJS concepts merged together, and it was just too much for me to be able to picture in my head at any given time. And now that we've split them apart, it's obvious that, oh my gosh, there's an extra attached target mesh that is there. Um, I don't know if this makes sense to anybody, right? Like, it barely makes sense in my head, and I think the fact that, it does make sense in my head though, and I think the fact that it's so difficult to speak to and to convert into like English, human language, from computer language, it just shows that these concepts are not, it's like we're trying to speak in a language, and let's say, um, maybe when our language was very primitive and we were primitive people and we were talking to each other and we were just making like boats, it was fine. Like the word boat was enough. But now today, if you lived around water and all that and you say boat, you're talking about something different than if you say ship. And the language didn't used to need, there was a time in human development that the language didn't need two words for boats and ships, but now we do need two words for boats and ships, and now we even need like, uh, we probably need like recreational boat versus fishing boat, and then cargo ship versus warship. Like our land, what the number of kinds of seagoing vessels that we have has expanded, so now our language has had to expand. That's exactly what we're seeing here. We didn't have that much going on in the ThreeJS, so there was no reason to have this complexity. But now, as we're trying to grow out, if we want to grow this sort of Showtime universe to larger than a certain point, we're gonna need more language, and that's the growing pain that we're experiencing now, and that's the kind of thing that's extremely difficult to communicate. Anyways, everybody, happy coding, and bye.